What's going on, guys? Happy Thursday to you all. Coming at you live today to actually talk on Facebook Lives. Today we're going to be talking about going live on Facebook, breaking past the fear of going live on Facebook, a few quick tips around that, and ultimately how to break past any fear that you're facing within your business to unlock new levels of growth. So, with all of that said, as we dive into things, for those of you joining me on this live, drop a hashtag live below and let me know. For those of you watching the replay, drop a hashtag replay below and let me know. I know I've seen this come up from many people before. They want to go live on Facebook or they want to start a Facebook group, but they don't want to start a Facebook group because they're worried about going live. And they don't want to go live because they're worried about judgment of others. So we're going to break past all of that today. I want to talk a little bit about my journey at first and kind of where I was at early on with this feeling. And then kind of talk about how we can break past this itself. And an exercise that I do every single quarter of the year to break past fears within my business and my life in general and develop myself and become better, both in business and life. So getting into things today, when it comes to breaking past fears within business, especially early on, you're going to feel the most resistance at that first stage of your business. And at that first stage, it will progressively become easier and easier as you continue to develop. But those first initial phases of business itself, and even going into things further than that, you're going to continue to face fears at every level of growth that you continue to encounter. And I'm going to walk through a couple of different scenarios on that. But today in particular, we're going to be talking about the fear of going live on Facebook. So for me early on, I was someone that was very shy in terms of not wanting to get in front of groups of people and speak in front of groups of people and do public speaking. At a young age, that's how I was. And even in speech class in high school, I remember literally freaking out on the days that I had to do speeches. Super, super worried about what I would say, if it would be bad, if it would be good. And then they'd pull out those random days in speech class where the teacher would basically say, okay, today's impromptu day. We're going to randomly pick a topic out of the hat and you have to go in front of the class and speak on it. And it would make me sick. It really would. I was not looking forward to it at all. And I would get very nervous on those days. And that really kind of instilled more fear in me because I didn't really get help with breaking past the fear that I was dealing with. I was kind of just forcing myself to do it. And I would go up there and slightly shake or get a little red in the face and feel more nervous and then be like, all right, I just want to get this done, be done with it, and then just worry about the next time I had to do that thing. And I think this kind of all lies within the same principle what we're talking about here, where any input that you're trying to do within your business that you aren't used to doing, that you haven't done before, there's going to be friction, there's going to be resistance. And in order for you to develop that skill that you want to develop, become better at that thing and grow your business, you have to be willing to face that fear. But it's one thing for me to sit back and say, go do that thing, go live. Everybody in this group has to go live today. Yes, that can help encourage you to do it, but especially as we get into more intricate things with the business, if I'm just the coach that's sitting and telling you, do this, do that, do this, do that, I'm not really benefiting you. And I see this a lot with other coaches and mentors out there where it's do the work, go and do this, go and do that, you have everything you need. And unfortunately, maybe they do, but at the same time, it's not helping that person on the other end that's struggling, that feels like, yes, I want to do this thing, but there's something not aligned with me to do this. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how to create that alignment internally so you can go out and actually do those things that you want to do and you know that you need to do. So whether it's messenger conversations, whether it's going live on Facebook, I'm going to share my screen shortly and walk through an activity that I do every single quarter to break past fears within my business and life and to grow as a person and within my business itself. Really powerful exercise that I got from Tim Ferriss, the author Tim Ferriss. I'm sure many of you are familiar with him. And essentially, let's share this now so we can dive into it and take a look at it. So the reason I like this is because it gives you a snapshot on worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, and it really puts things in perspective on how you can mitigate the risk or the bad things from happening and how, just by doing this thing, how much amazing things can come from it itself. So what I have pulled up here is the start of an example on going live on Facebook. So with this example here, basically what I do is I set a reminder for myself every single quarter of the year. And for those of you that haven't seen my last YouTube video, during my giveaway contest right now, I'm giving away these lights that I'm using here on this live stream. I'm giving away this camera that I'm using right here. $500 worth of streaming equipment that I'm giving away for free within my YouTube contest. That post is pinned to the top of the group. If you have not entered yet, I highly recommend you check it out. Now, after we rolled out that contest just over a week ago from today, you have the option to get additional entry options into it itself to give yourself a better chance to win. And the first additional entry option was watching my last video. And I rolled out part number 1 of what I call my 6-figure growth series, where I'm basically walking through takeaways and breakthroughs that I've been able to generate in going from scratch at 0 to my first 10K month and then building a multiple 6-figure business. The first video was mostly focused on breakthroughs that I was able to retain and generate from going from 0 to my first 10K month. And a topic that I talked on was fear and breaking past fear early on, and how it's so important to be in alignment with that and be willing to step outside your comfort zone, try new things, and create new levels of growth, and how that was a big driver for me and my growth. And I really didn't start to see traction with this until I started to deploy this exercise right here. So this is a detailed breakdown of what I call fear setting. So I do this, I have a reminder on my calendar for once a quarter, and I sit down and think about, okay, what are some things that I know I need to do or I want to do right now that maybe I'm not taking action on? And then I try to identify, is this something that I'm fearing to do? If so, let's figure out why I'm fearing this and how I can prevent this fear and start to propel myself into taking more action on this thing itself. So this can change based on whatever it is that you're working to develop within your business or within your life. Whether it's going live on Facebook, whether it's putting out offers in Messenger, there's gonna be fears within every element of business. For me right now, it could be hiring that next person on my team, or like I said, it's going to continue to develop every new stage that you hit. There's always going to be new fears. When I first made my first hire in my business, and I'll talk about this in the next part 2 of the YouTube series that I just talked on, it's making that first hire and starting to delegate things that you normally do to somebody else. It can be difficult to put that trust in someone, and it's easy to have fear behind that of, oh, I'm worried they won't do this right, or I'm worried they'll do this wrong. But once you start putting things in perspective and prepare accordingly, the fear starts to fade and action starts to become easier to take. Just like with putting out offers in Messenger, just like having Messenger conversations, putting out content, going live on Facebook, we need to give ourselves perspective and ground ourselves to give ourselves a snapshot of what's causing us not to do this thing. What's the worst case scenario if this will happen? How can we repair it if that does happen? And how can we put ourselves in a position to succeed? And then on top of all of that, what are some benefits that will come from this itself? So we're going to walk through this sheet now, and I'm going to show you how this looks. So let's say in this example, one of your guys' fear right now is going live on Facebook. If it's you watch this live video right now, let me know in the comments. Just say #me if you feel like you have some fear with going live on Facebook. No shame in it. I just went out and told you guys how much fear I had around it originally. I'm going to talk about it more here, but there's no shame in that. The first step is becoming aware and acknowledging that you're fearing something. And if you're not fearing going live on Facebook, let me know in the comments what's one element within your business right now that you feel that there's some fear within. Presenting offers in Messenger, having Messenger conversations, doing calls, whatever element it is, let me know in the comments what that fear is that you feel that you're dealing with right now. It's not allowing you to take the action that you want to take. And we're going to start to work past that today. So, if your fear is going live on Facebook, we're going to first define the list of the worst things that could happen if you take that step. Number 1, just a few things off the top of my head here. You blank and don't know what to say. What if you don't know what to talk about? Or what if you don't provide enough value or content in general to your audience and they aren't a fan of you? This is probably the biggest one that stands out to me. You blank and don't know what to say. I would say that was probably the biggest one for me when I first started to go live. So if these are 3 things that are some bad things that could happen, and the more you can develop this, the more you can really get to the point where you're facing that fear much more effortlessly because you gave yourself a snapshot of everything and put everything on the table that could be that worst case scenario. And then you're coming up with prevention options to mitigate that risk or mitigate that from happening. So how can we prevent the above bad things or decrease the likelihood of that happening? So if you blank and don't know what to say, how can we prevent that from happening? You could prepare for the live itself. So by preparing for the live, this is one quick tip on live video. Write out an outline of what you want to cover. Pick a theme or a general topic that you're talking about. And work backwards and say, okay, if this is the main theme, just like I talked about mentioning the theme of fear and going live on Facebook, I started out with that. And now pick some talking points between that you want to touch on until you wrap up the live. So then you can always glance down at a piece of paper or your screen next to you and look and pick up where you left off to make sure that you're touching on those points. It's usually when we're not prepared that then we freeze up and we say, I don't know what to say here. Same with if you're doing a speech in public. I just did my first best man speech, and I knew going into that speech that I needed to prepare beforehand. Otherwise, I would give myself or run the risk of getting in front of hundreds of people and freezing up. But if I simply prepared and had a clear outline of what I wanted to cover, I knew that it would be much easier for me to naturally flow with it. So what if you don't know what to talk about? This is taking some time to think about, okay, what does my audience deal with? What are some things that I could provide value on to my audience? And also, what are some breakthroughs that I'm generating along my journey as well that I could document and share? It's the easiest place to start. Think about where you were a couple months ago and where you are now. Talk about stories and how you went from there to where you are now. What am I doing right now in this live video? That very exact thing. I just told a story, a real life story about how I went from dealing with a bunch of fear talking in front of people to feeling confident in front of the camera. And it allows you to actually understand and relate to me much, much more and take into what I'm saying here and say, you know what, Blake might actually know what he's talking about with going live on Facebook because he once feared this a lot and he dealt with the same thing that I'm dealing with. That's how we can resonate with our audience members and provide value to them. Is taking stories, especially stories that we know that can relate to our audience and things that we know that they may be dealing with as well, and talk about how we broke past those things and how we created clarity, how we created breakthroughs, and document the journey along with that. So let's say we have these both filled out. You're defining number one. I'm not going to go through this whole sheet here because it will take some time to do, but I want you guys to get an understanding of kind of the core pillars behind this. So you're defining the worst things that can happen when you take that step or face that fear. We're now defining how can we prevent this from happening. So prepare the live video. What if I don't know what to talk about, or what if I freeze up on camera? Which is kind of similar to the first one, but there's a second point I want to make here. Prepare talking privately first. So one little tip that I did when getting comfortable with live video was I went and started, it was actually this Facebook group. I started this Facebook group before there was any members in here. I started to click go live and go live just to myself in front of an audience of no people, just to face the fear of clicking go live and talking. Because a lot of times we psych ourselves out just by knowing what's to come of that fear that we're facing. We're worried about clicking that go live button, and we're worried about the moment that it counts down and says 3, 2, 1, we're on camera, and it's scary. But if we can start to face that feeling and feel and see and feel what it feels like itself, now when we go and actually do the real thing, it doesn't seem as bad.
I don't see a feeling, and field in
Siri,
your contacts.
Siri is speaking.
Who would you like to FaceTime?
All right, sorry about that. So what I'm saying is here is we want to work to face the fears that we're facing in our business, and doing it in a micro way, like even taking some time to create a private group and go live in front of nobody just to see what that feels like. Because once we can taste it, it's so much easier to tackle it next time. So now that we've talked a little bit about some defining and prevention things, let's go into repair. So if the worst case scenario were to happen, list something even small on how it could be fixed or get help from someone. So if you plan to go live on Facebook, you do your first live, you blank. Let's say the worst case scenario happens. You blank and you don't know what to say. Now, if that were to happen, what are some things that you could do to make sure that you're improving next time? Number one, you look at that first lesson of what you did as not something that's super negative where everybody's going to judge you, and more as though people are going to be proud of you for going out of your way and facing that fear. Because there's going to be people within your audience with that same fear. And if they see you going out and even failing in the first attempt, it's still going to look courageous to them. But it only leads to an opportunity for you to improve. So you, by simply going out and freezing up in front of camera, yes, it may be scary for that moment in time, But it's going to lead to so many more lessons for you going into the next one where you're going to feel more confident, you're going to feel more comfortable with it. I use the analogy, it's like going and riding a bike for the first time. At first, when you're a kid, it can be scary to get on that bike because you're worried you might fall off. And then you go and do it the first time with training wheels, and it feels weird to actually do the motion, and you're kind of moving, and you're still a little bit hesitant, worried you're going to fall off, but you start to get moving in motion, and you do the thing. And then you do it a few more times, the training wheels on, and eventually you can get to the point where you can take the training wheels off and just coast and ride that bike like normal. Same goes with putting out content in your business. Same goes with going live on Facebook, and same goes with having messenger conversations or anything else that you're doing. There's going to be a resistance at first. What we want to do is prepare for that resistance, prepare ourselves internally to say, you know what, we have a plan in place to get around this, and if worst case scenario happens, here's how we're going to combat it, and here's how we're going to grow. So whether it's taking that first live video where you froze up and using it as a lesson learned to improve on the next one, or maybe it's taking that first live video and then going and talking to your mentor or to your coach and saying, hey, you know what, I went and I planned this live, I prepared the outline, I kicked things off, and I kind of froze up at this point of the live itself. I didn't really know what to say here. Do you have any tips for me on how I could improve this? And you know that if you do that, you will improve and you'll get better. Hopefully if you have a coach that can provide value and insight for you on that and help you break past it. We're going to scroll over here a little bit more. Now we're listing benefits of what might be the benefits of an attempted or partial success. So if you go live for the first time and it's an okay live, you at least did it, what is the benefit of that? Number one, you've tasted the real fear, tasted the fear, and you're going to feel, accomplished. You might look more, you're going to look more forward to doing the next one. You're going to become better than what you were yesterday, the day before you tried it. Again, these are just things off the top of my head. We can keep going on and on. But the point of this whole exercise is again, to see the clear snapshot of, hey, this is what I want to do. This is the worst case scenario that will happen. This is how I can prevent this from happening and prepare. If for some reason the worst case scenario does happen, which it very least likely does, but even if it does, we're going to have a plan in place to combat it and get past it and grow. And at the end of the day, behind all of these worst case scenarios, the benefits are so much greater than the costs. And this list should always be much greater than this, because it always is. At the end of the day, you're growing, you're becoming better, you're doing something that you didn't do before that you know will benefit you going forward. And the more you can develop that thing, the more powerful it becomes, the more leads you generate, the more sales you generate, the more trust you build with your audience. And these are all things that you can list out. More trust with audience, more confidence in the process, more sales, more leads. And it makes you realize, man, this may be something that I'm fearing right now, but now that I've seen this visually and I've given myself a snapshot, there's no reason why I shouldn't go and tackle this right away. And now it's up to you to raise your standards and start deploying what you have in place here and taking that next step and starting to taste that fear and face it. And to tie it all together with this sheet, now we're breaking things down and giving ourselves a snapshot of what happens if we don't do this thing. And this is where you really get some real perspective. So if you wanted to go live today and you haven't done a live yet, 6 months from now, if you still have not done a live, how is it going to make you feel? Or how is it going to impact you? Maybe it leads to less money. Maybe it leads to you feeling more down on yourself, like you can't face these things in your business and you can't grow. Or like you aren't good enough. What happens a year from today? Stay in the same spot, not developing, etc. And then 3 years from today. And this is what encourages you and aligns you to propel yourself to taking that action and taking more relentless action on the things that you know you need to take action on in your business itself. Really powerful exercise to do. Again, I recommend doing this quarterly because it really helps you stay aligned and always making sure that you're facing things that you know you need to face in your business and unlocking new levels of growth. So I'm going to pull this back out here and chat a little bit more on this topic. Let's pull up my camera. So when it comes to facing fears in your business, we want to first, rather than force ourselves and just say, do it, it's always a good thing to take that action and take imperfect action. But if we can prepare a little bit beforehand and give ourselves a synopsis or snapshot on what can happen or what could go wrong and what can go right, we start to realize that us waiting to do that thing is only hurting us, and the best way to benefit ourselves and our future is to actually go out and do the thing. But before we have this snapshot in front of us, if somebody's telling us to go do the thing, or if we're trying to force ourselves to doing the thing, it's going to feel uncomfortable and it's going to feel scary because we haven't built out this plan yet. And it doesn't have to take more than 5 minutes to do, but this simple exercise can allow you to stay grounded, to cool down, and to really start to step into taking new levels of action. Aside from what we broke down here in terms of going live in front of a private group or a group with no people to practice hitting go live and facing that fear, or preparing that live itself, meditation before live is very beneficial. Taking some deep breaths, doing some breathing exercises. Whenever there's a moment of anxiety before doing something, a sales call, any activity that you're doing, if you can pause and align yourself and take some simple deep breaths, it's going to make a massive difference in your nerves going into that thing. Even if it's just 5 deep breaths, it doesn't even have to be an organized meditation exercise itself. And along with doing some meditation, it could be listening to a song that you enjoy listening to, or your favorite song. I used to do this before sales calls. I used to turn on one of my favorite songs beforehand because it put me in a good mood. It gave me a good vibe. And it made me go into doing that thing in a different mind space, in a different headspace overall. And lastly, we have to also give ourselves a snapshot or a realization on the fact that it doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody expects you to be perfect on camera. There's many times where I've messed up on live videos here. There's many videos before, even looking back before I did this live, I went back and looked at some old videos. Part of me is embarrassed for some of those videos, but really I'm not, because I look at it in 2 ways. If you with the inputs that you're doing now, your goal should, in a sense, be to look back a year from now and kind of be embarrassed with what you did. Not in a bad way where you were ashamed you did it, but in a way that you can look back and say, man, I really grew. I went from barely being able to click go live to now going live once to twice a week and having fun doing it. And connecting with my audience in new ways that I never have before. And this is also how we can start to fall in love with what we're doing in our business more. Because we're starting to really align ourselves in how we're growing and knowing that we're pushing ourselves in ways each and every day to where we can go to bed at night and say, you know what? Maybe I didn't make a sale today, but I went out and did something today that I've been pushing off doing, and I know that I grew and I became better today. And I became 1% better, and that's the most important thing. So for those of you dealing with the fear of going live, hopefully this helps on that area itself. But for those of you dealing with any fear in general with your business, deploy this. If you want a copy of this sheet, I have an opportunity for you to plug into it and get access to this now as I do this live, where you can just comment below. Comment fear setting below. Comment the word fear setting, and I will get you a copy of this sheet to plug into and utilize. And set a reminder on your calendar every single quarter, starting this quarter from today, to do this exercise. And I guarantee you, you're going to become a better businessman, a better person as a whole, and you're really going to develop and grow in ways you haven't grown before. Doesn't take much. Tiny gains is all it takes. I've always lived by the mindset of becoming 1% better every single day. And if you could do one thing today that you've been pushing off doing that you know will benefit you and your business, you're growing, you're becoming better, and you can go to sleep at night feeling fulfilled, feeling satisfied, and looking forward to diving into your next day and doing the same thing. And that really compounds and stacks up over time and leads to massive growth over a period of time. So this video, along with the last YouTube video that I rolled out, will really pair well together. So if you haven't checked that out, I will link that below in this live here so you can go and look at that. But again, I took that first video and now I'm breaking into this sheet a little bit more in depth for you guys so you can use this, deploy this, and understand my thought process and mindset behind using this within my business and life itself. So I hope each of you have a great remainder of your week and great weekend. Deploy this today. Let's face some fears and grow starting today. And aside from that, if you haven't entered in the giveaway, be sure to do so. If you haven't claimed your additional entry options, be sure to go watch the video linked below this and check it out. Part 2 will be coming within the next 48 hours, so keep an eye out for that. And I will chat with y'all soon. So thanks again for those that hopped on today's live. Hopefully this helped a few of you here. And we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.